Okay, welcome back to the actual show that we're recording here right now. Thank you for listening to the news section there about the Microsoft thing. Um, so we are two final topics to close out the show. Going to run through both of them fairly quickly here. Not to take up too much of your time. We're going to start it off with the 10 remakes we need ASAP. The 10 games I want remade soon. And I could probably put together 100 more of these lists. There's so many games, so many classics that I want to see remade. But let's start it off here with number 10. And this is in no particular order, just 10 games I want to see remade. First one, Death Row. For those of you who don't know what Death Row is, and I don't blame you, it's a really odd game, but it's so unique. It was a OG Xbox exclusive, might have been on PC as well, but it was console exclusive to the original Xbox. And this game is essentially, it's a sports game, like a totally unique, brand new sport that was introduced for this game that blends football, hockey, and basketball all into this like very chaotic, hyper violent, just wild ass concoction of a sport. And I don't know, I just think a game like this could really make some cash in today's, live service space. And really in the sports gaming space in general, because there's we're lacking uniqueness in that space, or anybody trying anything all that innovative. Everything is, NFL licensed, NBA licensed, NHL licensed. This is like, what was it's reminiscent of something like a Rocket League, but for a more mature audience that's okay with gritty, gory fucking violence taking place. But it's blending sports that we all know and love. And yeah, I'm not a live service game fan at all, but I think in terms of something that could get me into it, this Death Row game I think would absolutely work for people like me who are really not into those games at all. But this just offers up something so unique where you have combat elements going on, and you have you got the ball that you're palming and trying to throw it into the hoop while avoiding being tackled. And so it's like, it's familiar in the setup of what you're doing to achieve to win the game, but it's so unique in the like, it's so unique in just how it's incorporating and mashing everything up all together. So I don't know. I think this thing could really work in today's space, especially if it was modernized up a little bit, polished up a little bit, and maybe you could explore some of those combat elements a little bit more. Taking from your NHL blitzes and your NHL hits and your NFL blitz games, and just allowing you to go to fucking war, beating the shit out of each other, having like having a section of the game that's just that. After, each quarter you get to go and engage in like a straight up brawl or some shit, and then the winner of that brawl gets some benefit or some boost going into the second quarter. Like, there's cool ways you can tinker with that format and come up with something that I think would be really cool in today's like live service marketplace, which, I'm not a fan of inherently, but I do think that would be a cool game to see brought back in that space. Number 9, or next up, this is in no order, The Godfather for the PS2. Such an underrated open world Grand Theft Auto inspired title. Not enough people talk about this. I don't think enough people know about this game for the PS2. It was really great. You got to create a character and take him into the world of The Godfather, experiencing some of the most iconic moments from the films. And it's a bummer to me that these gangster style movies just completely have not been like adapted into video games since that era. And yeah, I would just love to see something like this come back, where you create a character, get to experience some of the big moments from the Godfather movie. Like, it could literally be a straight up remake, or which, once again, licensing issues, all that, I'm sure that would be a nightmare. But to just have a Godfather licensed game that's a very similar setup to this, but getting to experience that shit with modern graphical fidelity, and like, I just think that would be so sick, especially with a modern GTA inspired open world to go and explore. And yeah, I would absolutely love that. I loved in the Godfather, they had where I shouldn't say business management, because it's literally you're going into people's businesses and you're just roughing these motherfuckers up, trying to get more money out of them. Just vile shit. But it was so fun. It was like a little mini game added in there where you're going and roughing up their shop, and you can't go too far, but you got to get like that right amount so that you'll increase the amount of money that they're willing to give you. So silly, so fun. I loved the damn Godfather on the PS2. We got to see that come back. Next one I'm going to run through really quick here. I've talked about this next one 1,045,000 fucking times. Dino Crisis and Resident Evil Code Veronica. Capcom, you're running out of remakes. Go remake Resident Evil 1. I know you're going to remake the remake. I'm all there for that. I would absolutely love that. After that, let's not jump to Resident Evil 5. Let's go Code Veronica, then Dino Crisis. It's what the people want, man. The people that we're clamoring for some damn Dino Crisis. Dino Crisis might be number one, honestly. I want to see some modern dinosaur horror going on. I think that would just be so sick today, running on the RE engine, seeing the big ass dinosaurs with the kind of nemesis mechanics where they're chasing you, and the spontaneous, popping up out of nowhere. Similar to how like Mr. X was in Resident Evil 2, and kind of how Nemesis was in RE3, but that was a little bit more, planned in RE3. But the spontaneous sort of battles that could take place and shit, it would just be so cool to see that in on modern consoles. But Code Veronica 2, that's a story that needs to be told. It's a great Claire story. It's I just love the Ashford family. I love the setup that they have there with Wesker, and it's a very, very difficult, inaccessible game. I mean, you can play it on modern systems and shit, but it's really, really hard. So to see that cleaned up and polished up a little bit more, yeah, we got to see Dino Crisis and Code Veronica at some point. And I think we will. I think Capcom knows there's a lot of money on the table there. Next up, Simpsons Hit and Run. Once again, talking about licensed games, and I think I have one more licensed game on the list here, or two technically, but Simpsons Hit and Run. There's been rumors of this returning for a while, but lately it seems to have kind of died out completely. But this for me was an all-time classic on the PS2. Once again, a GTA inspired open world, but getting to explore Springfield. You're going around with Homer and Bart, all these iconic characters, while driving around and doing street races, and you can get out on foot and kind of engage in some light combat, and chase down collectibles and shit. It's just a ridiculously fun, awesome license game that came out in an era of really rough license games, and this was one that absolutely avoided that curse. And just once again talking about seeing this modernized, seeing a modern version of Springfield, running that on your PS5, on your Series X, I just think that would be so cool. And it seems that the Simpsons maybe aren't as relevant as they used to be, of course, but I think that the fanfare is there. If this was, and this is one that I don't think I would really want to see a reboot or a spiritual successor, or like I would want a full-on remake, because I think the name alone, Simpsons Hit and Run, I think that holds a lot of weight. So I would want to see it come back as just Simpsons Hit and Run, the remake, or just straight up Simpsons Hit and Run. I how like Resident Evil 2, it's not Resident Evil 2 remake, it's just Resident Evil 2 now. So I would love to see something like that for Simpsons Hit and Run. Next up, kind of a licensed game, kind of whatever you want to call it, Tony Hawk's Underground 1 and 2. And talking about great fucking remakes, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 in 2020, I believe. So solid. Incredible remake, staying so true to the original, but improving it, modernizing it in every way, taking the best mechanics from some of the later Tony Hawk Pro Skater games, introducing those into 1 and 2 that weren't there originally. And for me personally, I always enjoyed Underground a little bit more, because I'm such a big fan of open worlds. And getting the creative character, getting the having the voice acting in there, having the ability to like hop off of your board and a real storyline to follow along with. Like, I really, really loved Underground 1 and 2. 1 was a little bit more grounded. 2 was so silly and over the top. And yeah, I would love to see both of them brought back. I could see that maybe being a little bit more difficult than like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 package. So maybe a 1 remake would suffice. And then if that did well, maybe get Underground 2 made possibly. But 1 would be fine with me. Just Tony Hawk Underground 1 remake, would love to see that. Next up, Parasite Eve, a game that could maybe benefit from a remake more than almost anything on the market. That game is tailor-made for modern audiences. Tailor-made for modern audiences with the renaissance of survival horror in the AAA space. And this story for Parasite Eve, it's this scientifically fucking the scientific intrigue there with the horror elements combined. And the Parasite Eve, it had no voice acting on the PS1, so getting to have all of that lore told to you with some solid voice acting and great performances there with some damn good motion capture. And this doesn't, I'm not saying this has to be a $200 million production by Square Enix, because Lord knows that every goddamn time they put money into a game, they call it a failure. But even if this was a smaller scale title with some just good voice acting and some decent production value, and obviously, you know, moving away from the turn-based combat, going to the Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, RE4 style, well, we'll go more RE2 because of the strict survival horror focus to that gameplay. Having that in a Parasite Eve remake would be absolutely fucking phenomenal. And I really do think if they wanted to pour money into it and have that, you know, like small open world, have that a little bit more explorable, where, you know, in the original you just kind of, you pick the destination and you travel to it, and like, but imagine actually being able to traverse to those locations. Would just be so sick. Next up, Knights of the Old Republic. And I know that this is allegedly in the works, but I think we all know that that's probably never going to see the light of day, unfortunately. And it's such a bummer, because similar to Parasite Eve, I can't really think of any game I've played ever that I would like to see remade more than Knights of the Old Republic and Parasite Eve. And once again, what we heard that Aspyr was attempting to do just had, man, it had my attention. It had my ears perked up. I was ready. They were taking inspiration from Final Fantasy VII, the remake, supposedly, with like having the mild turn-based strategic element there, but really leaning into the action-oriented combat. Imagine that, dude. Having the decision-making, having the BioWare heavy narrative that they delivered in the Knights of the Old Republic, the original game, but with the fucking great action gameplay that you got from Final Fantasy VII Remake, and being able to pull all that shit off from Knights of the Old Republic in real-time combat would, golly, that would just be so sick. It would be so sick. A dream remake. And whenever it got announced that it was kind of in development hell, with Aspyr being pulled from it and Saber Active being put on it, and it bummed me out. It really, really bummed me out, because that's a game that I would just love to see that thing remade. And I don't think it's going to happen. So once again, 10 remakes we need ASAP. I'm going to throw Knights of the Old Republic on there, because I think if we're ever going to see it's probably going to have to be a remade version of this remake. So hopefully it sees the light of day, but my hopes are not too high on that. I would love to be proven wrong. And you guys know, when I take an L, I'll eat it. I'll wear it. I will happily take that L if we can see KOTOR pop back up at some point. Next up, Legacy of Kane. The whole series, the Blood Omens, the fucking all that shit. This is a series that is so appealing to me. And everything else that I've talked about here, I've played all these games. Legacy of Kane, I know I have played them, I'm sure. Like, I see the box art. I'm sure I rented it at some point at Blockbuster, but I have no memories of these games. So it's like, I just want to jump back into them so bad. But there are a lot of these motherfuckers. Like a lot of games that I have to go and track down, and from the PS1 to the PS2, like it would just be so nice to have a complete package or a rebooted version of Legacy of Kane that kind of combines a lot of these stories together, and you just get like this one epic 70-hour adventure. Or we can keep it simple, remake the first one, start there, nice 8-hour game, then go to the second and the third, and however the fuck it was laid out. But just this vampiric fucking mild horror influence with the hack and slash gameplay, and the tone just looks so cool. It just looks so sick. And I mean, I know Embracer is talking about wanting to remake those games or reboot them in some form or fashion. And so I'm hoping that I can just hold off a little bit and that we will get these remakes. But if we don't start hearing some rumblings on that at some point, I'm just going to have to go find all the old games and do a real replay or first time playthrough, honestly, of those games. So I'm hoping that by 2024 or so, we'll have an announcement for those remakes. I think we will have at least an announcement for like the first remake or a reboot of the franchise. I do believe we'll see that sometime soon. All right, next up, another one that comes with a little bit of an asterisk: Metal Gear Solid 1 through 3. I know 3 is like the big rumor that it's in the works. I don't understand why Metal Gear Solid 1 isn't being remade first. I know, like, technically MGS3 is the first game, but like the way that it was told originally just made more sense to me. I think, like, I feel like you have to have the knowledge or the investment from 1 and 2 to really appreciate 3. But I'm sure that there's some way, if Bluepoint's working on it, I'm sure, working alongside Konami, I'm sure that they can figure out some way of tying shit up and making it all make sense. But my big fear is, once again, similar with Konami, Silent Hill 1 not getting remade, but 2 getting remade. And it's like, I really, really hope that MGS1 isn't like off the table for a remake, or MGS2 isn't off the table for a remake. I definitely would have much preferred to go MGS1, 2, 3, Silent Hill 1, 2, 3, however they ended up doing that. Remake them in the order, but once again, you can kind of argue with Resident Evil 2 being remade and not the remake of 1, that sets a kind of weird precedent there. But you're talking about remaking regardless, Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, I really do hope we get those remakes as well as 3. And fucking A, we don't know if 3 is a real thing yet or not. So I'm including that in there as well, because all we have to go off right now about MGS3 are a bunch of rumors. Konami does seem to be back in the game, licensing out their titles and striving to get these on modern consoles remade and modernized to the liking of the current audience. So I'm hoping that is the case. But also Metal Gear Solid 4 locked to the fucking PlayStation 3. Get that damn thing off and then remake that motherfucker as well. Might as well. And finally, to close off the list, I should have put this together with KOTOR, but Star Wars Bounty Hunter. And I know that this is a weird one because I'm not saying a direct remake of that game, but just a new Star Wars Bounty Hunter game. We need to see a new Star Wars Bounty Hunter game. You're talking about the huge success of The Mandalorian. It became a humongous hit television series, and no Bounty Hunter games. And EA, there's no EA shackles attached to the Star Wars license at this point. You would think that by now we would have an announcement for a big, high-budget Star Wars Bounty Hunter title. I think Amy Hennig is working on a Star Wars game, which I could see that being a Bounty Hunter game based off of her expertise in the past, or which she's, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, like a lead writer for the Star Wars game. Once again, correct me if I'm wrong on this shit, but yeah, I could see that game potentially being a Bounty Hunter game. Ubisoft has that open world Star Wars game, but for some reason I'm feeling like that might be, I don't know, I think a Bounty Hunter game could possibly be the open world game, especially if they have, vehicles and shit that they're exploring around with. But with I could also see that being another Jedi game, with just the third person sort of melee pedigree that but I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, that it's the team that made The Division that is working on the Star Wars Ubisoft game. Once again, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on all this shit going off the top of my dome here. But regardless of all that, a Star Wars bounty hunter game. I do hope that there's one in the works. I have a hard time believing that there's not anything at all in the works. And I just loved that PS2 game, you know, having the jetpack, and that was kind of like the puzzle solving, traversal puzzle solving, where you have the fuel and you can't use up too much of the fuel to get to the next platform that you're trying to reach. So you're timing everything out perfectly, and the strategy that was involved in that, and the shooting was solid enough. And I really, really enjoyed that PS2 Star Wars bounty hunter game. So something similar to that, I would love to see that remade. So those are the 10 remakes that we need to see ASAP Rocky. I hope that we get at least a few of these. I think we will get a couple of these for sure, but most of them probably pipe dreams, but that's okay.